Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, knowledge per se is out there. We just have to tap into it. That is, we have to put some effort to get knowledgeable. That means get the information, the knowledge that exists. So it requires some effort. It's like the notion, the theory of forms by Plato, by the ancient Greek philosopher, where he says that the world, the ideas are living in a form somewhere, and we just tap into it and we use it. Like a horse, there is an abstract form that we are using it. The horse in our daily lives as a notion. I'm not going to get deeper into that, but it's similar with knowledge. I was just trying to make a connection between tapping into the knowledge, the information. So when we tap into the information is just there. It's not good information or bad information. That's information. It's how we use the information based on our moral standards and reality and our agreed upon rules of behavior. We agreed upon them. It's not like they say the creator came and gave us this or that. Okay, whatever. Put it aside. Not going to discuss it here. The problem is this. Since the knowledge is over there, we can tap into it regardless. For instance, let's say you have a neighbor that you don't like and a neighbor that you like. And let's say the neighbor that you like says, I don't know, when it's raining, it's good to carry an umbrella. That's a good advice from a good person, right? Your neighbor that you like. And you have the bad neighbor that did some bad stuff in the past, okay? And the neighbor says, well, when there's sun outside, it's good to wear sunglasses, UV and all that. Now, that's a good advice coming from a person that you don't like. Now, should you not take the advice, good advice, coming from the bad guy? That is just information. He just tapped into it and expressed it verbally. You should not listen to that guy's good advice because it comes from a bad guy that you don't like. Of course you take it because you don't care about the bad guy. You take about the advice. He didn't create the advice. The advice was there. Some other people said it many times before he did. It just happened that you found out that you're going to use that advice. You heard it from these guys. What I'm trying to say is this. When bad dudes create certain things that are, in this case, technologically advanced, or the most technologically advanced, you're going to use them to defend yourself. Regardless if it was used by science, again, is in the abstract. You can use science for good stuff or for the bad stuff, but science is science. So let me show you what exactly I'm talking about, because these guys are trying to pinpoint, these guys being the Ukrainians, are trying to pinpoint the Nazis with the Russians, because the Russians are going to employ some defensive tactics that the Nazis employed in the Second World War. And somehow that's bad. And I will make the point that the Nazis just did something in a war for a good reason, to defend themselves. So if you borrow that, and that's the best method to defend yourself, you're not going to do it because it was done by those guys. Again, knowledge is there. It's not like they invented this. Yeah, they invented it, but it was there. Used by bad people, right? So this comes from Ukrinform. And this is the title. This is from the 24th of December 2023. Russians recreating Nazi defense lines in Zaporizhzhia region. Melitopol mayor. So I am supposed to say, oh my God, but I'm not going to say that. You know why I'm not going to say that? Because we have this. Remember how many Nazi generals were taken and functioned in Western militaries? Do you remember that? Do you know how much technology the Americans and the Western countries took from the Wehrmacht and from the Luftwaffe? Including the Messerschmitt 262, the fighter jet. So because the Germans used it, we should not have used it? Garbage. But they have to, you see, this article is a Tard article. They tried at a very low baboon level, they tried to put together the Russians and the Nazi. Unsuccessfully here. Because I know shit. I tapped into that as much as I could. So if you have the knowledge, you can immediately realize when these guys are garbage. And that article is garbage. Why? Because there are NATO generals, and were NATO generals that were in NATO, and they were former Nazis. I got names, just Google it, Yahoo it, do whatever you want. Nazi war Nazi criminals became, right there. The first article right here, I just put Nazi generals working for US and NATO. Nazi war criminals became high-ranking commanders in NATO. I'm not going to go. You can go and find and read for yourselves. And not only that, they give you names, and not only that, remember the American Operation Paperclip? Remember what that was? They were Nazi scientists. So the Americans were trying to kidnap Nazi scientists and get them to our country to invent for us. The Russians did the same thing. The Russians got, I don't know, like about 10% of them, and the 90 it was the Brits, it was the French, or the French was the Americans. These were the Brits and the Americans after the Second World War. Paperclip. Go and look for it. And not only, I know, I couldn't find it here, I didn't even look too hard, but I know that after the Second World War, the American military took some plans of how to fight warfare plans by the Germans, and they put it in their military teachings. If you go in the, I don't know, how is that called? I can't remember the military academy. Point 5.4 point, you know what I'm talking, 5th point, 3rd point, 1 point, whatever it is. I'm not going to look for it, right? But you know what I'm talking about. Over there, you might find certain things that were invented by others, good or bad. Why? Because they were good in war, that you can use them. So for these guys who say, well, the Russians are using the Nazi defense, maybe they are the best. I don't know. I mean, maybe the other guys overran them. But nevertheless, you apply it because it's the best. I will give you another example. You remember that stealth fighter bomber that Americans did? The one, no, it was not that. It was the 5th generation. The 5th generation American F-52 or whatever it was, 50-some. Remember, it has a certain kind of shape. And say, oh. And then the Russians came with one. Very similar in shape, very similar. And the American says, see, that proves that you guys are just involved in technology, spying, military. Yeah, they're all involved in it. And then I listened to, or I read, I can't remember, a Russian general. He said, who was talking about this issue when the Americans are accusing, see, they're copying us. He said, no, it was not that. Oh, that one too. You know what it was? It was the Challenger, man. It was the Challenger, I think. But anyway, one of these, I can't remember, one of these or both. And I know the guy said, well, the Americans have to understand that the laws of aerodynamics were not invented by them. They are over there. So we're going to reach the same conclusion at one point because our technology is evolving, is not jumping 10 steps, is the next one. And by the time we get to the next one, is that, in order to run, like sprint, first you have to stand up. But first you have to be alive, okay? And after you be alive, and let's say you're a little baby over there, you're not going to be jumped from there straight to running, to sprinting. That's steps that each and every human being will take. So the next one is what? Standing up. The next one is walking a little bit, and then walking faster. Your motor abilities develop. Right? And then you go, and then eventually you learn how to run, and then you learn how to sprint, and then you become better if you but it's the same step each and every person will take. So that means that, let's say I'm 7 years old and I'm running, and I'm going to call a 5-year-old who just learned how to run, you're copying me? It's imbecilic. It's the same. He just got to that point, was behind you. But doesn't mean that necessarily he copied me. So this is the reason that these guys are using. And now maybe the Russians did it. I'm pretty sure the Americans did it too. Why? Remember Sputnik? The satellite? Well, those guys were first in space. That means that when the Americans were second in space, they necessarily stole from the Russians? No. Or yes. So it's always going to be like this. Anyway, let's go back to this article and see what point these imbeciles are making here. Because it's an imbecilic point with Russian recreating Nazi defensive lines. And if you think about it, The Nazis were creating the defensive lines against the Soviets. So from attack from the east. I think the Russians now, they rightly expect attacks from the west. So how can you use them? You can't really use them. It's like you drive a car in marche arrière, in how do you call it, rear, back, whatever. That's how you do. You're backing up the car. You're gonna how you drive it. So the same when you design, defensive lines, you design them according to the attack coming from that direction. You can't just jump around and start fighting that one and recreating over there. You can't, because you look at topography, and that's how you do it, with rivers, with banks with hills, with forest. That's how you do it. So it doesn't, if I'm at the end of the forest and the forest is behind me, I'm looking over there, and somehow those guys are going to attack me from there. I'm not going to create it. I'm just going to turn around. I'm going to go to the other side of the forest and create it over there the same way. But anyway, let's see what these guys are talking about. In the temporary occupied territory of Zaporizhzhia region, Russian invasion forces are trying to recreate a defensive line initially set up by the Nazis during World War. Yeah, but they're fighting the guys coming from the east. You guys are expected to come from the west, unless the Russians are tards and they think that Moscow is going to attack themselves. Again, recreating the defensive line initially set up. So it's not like the same tactic, the same, how do you call, dragon teeth or trenches or something like that. The Kremlin dictator. This is now, how old must you be with your brain in order to get this as, oh yeah, I'm an intellectual. The Kremlin dictator has chosen Hitler's tactics. Regardless, man, regardless, if I have to defend my country, and this was designed by retard Biden, I will take it. I don't care. If it works, I will use it. If it's used by that guy or that guy, do I care? We're not going to use the best method of defending our country because it was done by, I don't know, Adolf. No, 9. Jesus Christ, man. And he's trying to build a defense axis along the Stellung line. However, the Nazis failed to hold it at the time. Why? Because it was the Soviets. Maybe because they didn't have any more oil from Romania and wherever they were taking it. Remember, they tried to get to the Soviet Ural and the Caucasus to get the oil. That's what the whole Stalingrad garbage was. Going towards that way. Going to get the resources. Why? Because these guys were bombing the Romanian oil fields in, how do you call it, in Ploiești, in Romania. Anyway, here it is. However, Nazis failed to hold it at the time, and today the Nazis won't succeed either. He wrote, posting the relevant map drawn by Brady Afrique, showing enemy fortifications marked in red. Who said this? Oh, the Melitopol mayor, Ivan Fedorov. Not very smart. And they're going to show us here a map. I'm going to show you with you right there. I guess this is, according to Fedorov, Tokmak is surrounded by rat holes from all sides. Near Melitopol, the Russians are digging trenches not only from the side of Vasilivka, but also towards Crimea. Well, what can you do? You're not going to use it? Because why? Melitopol, I'm guessing this. Alright, and this is Berdyansk. Let me show you a different map so you can, I'm going to go on Sputnik. I mean, really, I'm not going to use this technique because he's my enemy. Alright, here is Zaporizhzhia right here. Zaporizhzhia Oblast, and this is Melitopol Berdyansk. So what you see over there is this right here. So what you see in this, Tokmak over here, and this is that little, used to be reservoir that was blown up over there down south a little bit. So it is right here, and this is Tokmak here, Melitopol, Berdyansk, and this is the reservoir, and you have the dam that was destroyed here. No, right here. All right, my friends. So again, you're not going to use it because the bad guy used it, or something like this. And like it's the same thing. Oh, it didn't work for the Germans, it will not work for these Nazis. If you remember correctly, Soviet Union beat Germany, right? So then in the Second World War. So that means that the Germans will not win, have no chance of winning against the Russians now? Is the same thing? Or I don't know, I can give you tons of examples similar with this one. Nevertheless, my friends, don't use it because it's not going to help you. It failed once. All right. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.